Hey everybody, Joe Morrison with the 49 SAF Pod. Gosh, I know it's been a long time, but I got something special for you. I'm coming to you with the first of a two-parter, and we're going to talk to the Pitchfest winners. We held Pitchfest at the end of August in the ZJ Lusek Library, the Anchorage Assembly Chambers. It was part of the Accelerate Alaska Conference, and we had three winners. We had Alexa Daniels of Fossil Fuel AK. She was the People's Choice Award. We had Keith McCormick of Quick Cup, and he was the Existing Idea Award. And then we had Orion Matthews, who is the New Idea Award. His company is called Thanks.org. The last two companies are software platforms. The first company is a Free of Donut. And this podcast is really all about the classics of entrepreneurship. Do you push all your chips in? Do you go all the way in? Or do you keep your day job? What's the process of finding your co-founders like? Why do you go without a co-founder sometimes and build your company? And of course, we talk a little bit about what it's like to be an Alaska startup too, the pros, the cons of that. These are three fantastic companies. To be honest, I was blown away by the quality of the pitches at Pitchfest. I look forward to doing more of that. And speaking of, we'll get into this podcast really quick and really fast, but I'd like you, if you've got your browser windows open, to go to alaska.startupweek.co. November 8th through the 18th, essentially, starting off in Anchorage with a startup weekend and finishing in Juneau with a startup weekend. There's going to be a whole lot of programming. So go to alaska.startupweek.co, check it out. More good stuff for the Alaska ecosystem on the way. And without further ado, let's hear from our Pitchfest winners. So anyway, thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us.
Right on. So why don't we start with Alexa? Tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Yeah, so I run a business called Fossil Fuel AK, and basically it was founded by 5 members who were just extremely frustrated with the lack of convenient snacking options on the market, which were low in sugar, because we were all on the keto diet at the time. So being myself, I kind of just took this problem head on, and I was managing a coffee shop at the time. So I quit my job, dropped out of school, emptied my bank account, and decided to fix this problem. So right now we're making performance donuts, which are low in sugar and also nutritious and delicious.
Did you drop out of school?
Yeah, I did. I kind of did all at once. It was about a year ago.
Okay, so it's been a year. Look, we'll introduce Keith in a second with Quick Cup, but Alexa, I mean, this is. I'm only pausing here because this is like one of the classic entrepreneurial moments, right? You hear about all kinds of people dropping out and quitting their job and pursuing their goals full time. What's that been like, and what are the pros and cons? And we'll start there.
Yeah. So I guess I was going to business school, and I mean, the type of content I was receiving in school, to me, seemed almost intuitive. So I guess that's what prompted me to figure out something else to do while I was in school. Is I was like, I think I could probably do this on my own. Now, I'm not recommending that anybody that's in business school just drop out and start it on their own, because it obviously makes it a lot harder. So originally when I dropped out, it was exciting and new, but I also had this entire moment in myself where I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I literally spent all the money I had saved up for college on starting this business, and I was still having to put money into the business for the next 6 months, money I didn't have, right? So there was definitely a few moments where I was overwhelmed with anxiety of just questioning why I had made that choice. But there's just something inside me that has constantly or always been an entrepreneurial heart. So I knew I was doing the right thing, even though it was scary. It's really scary to make a choice like that. But I know the amount of work I put into something, that's what I'm going to get out of it. And lately I've kind of been able to raise my head up a bit. It's been almost a year. And finally, I'm not having to put money into the business anymore. It's actually making us something. So this is a pretty good point to be at where I can pick my head up and kind of see what's ahead for us and start seeing little successes.
Wow, that's amazing. So, it's just amazing to talk to somebody who is sort of 1 year in the classic, I'm going to push all my chips forward and focus on this full time. Thanks for sharing that. That's amazing.
Yeah, of course.
Keith, tell us about you and your company. And by the way, guys, as we talk today, feel free to build on each other's points.
Yeah, no problem. No, thanks for having me. Keith McCormick. I own a software company called Quick Bites. We have an improved order ahead software and experience. Growing up in Alaska, I saw the coffee carts, and it's a big part of our coffee culture up here is the kind of independently owned coffee carts. And I saw Starbucks coming out with order ahead systems, and then McDonald's and Burger King, everybody's starting to come out with order ahead systems. And I kind of saw these independent shops don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the money to dump into order ahead systems. So I thought about how I could help them, and started developing an order ahead system. It started small, like, okay, we'll help them. A lot were using text-in systems, and I think I could make an app that they could all use for relatively cheap or free, and allow them to start getting into that market and keeping up with industry leaders. And it started growing and growing until we kind of improved upon all the order ahead systems that are out right now, because all the order ahead systems either rely on the customer to guess when they will arrive at the store to get their order, or as soon as they order on the app, like Starbucks makes the drink, which ends up just having the coffee sitting on the counter, degrading in quality, and ends up being wasted and wasting employees' time remaking the order. So we developed a system that gives the barista a real-time countdown to when that customer will arrive, get through the drive-through line, and actually be at their window ready to pick up their order. So optimizes their efficiency, better quality product to the customer, and it's been a long journey of growing and improving.
Well, listen, tell us about your day job. Is there a day job? Is there not a day job? How are you? Are you full-time on Quick Cup?
I am full-time on working for the company. I developed this system while I was working in Afghanistan. I was a combat medic. I was working at the U.S. Embassy there, and I was, able to save up some money. And when Quick Cup and the company just started being too much to handle from being over there, I was working night shifts, staying up all night so I could call, in the U.S. and coordinate with people back home. So eventually that became a little too much, and I decided to come back and do this full time.
Didn't you come pitch to us like in the very beginning of you starting up Quick Cup while I was managing that cafe?
I believe so, yeah. When I first started, I pitched from Afghanistan to one of the pitch competitions at the Beartooth Theater. And then shortly after that, I actually came home, worked full time, and was able to go to the coffee shops like that and talk to people. It's hard to do that on the phone. And being from Alaska and just knowing the culture here, I really wanted to go into the stores and talk to the baristas and the managers and the owners and get their feeling of how we can make the system better and get the system into stores.
Yeah, I think that was the first time I met you, which I thought was funny because I was managing the coffee shop called Quick Cup, and you were starting that system called Quick Cup as well.
Yeah, not the best branding for the Anchorage area.
No, that's perfect. We ended up shutting it down. It's all you know.
No, it's all us. Yep.
Tell me about what your ambitions are for these companies. You're both Anchorage-based entrepreneurs, and we have a smaller market. The state of Alaska has fewer than 800,000 people in it. Anchorage is just south of 300,000 people itself, more in the metro south central area. Where do you want these businesses to be in 5 years?
Am I going first?
Yep.
Okay. So truthfully, when I originally started Fossil Fuel, the vision we had in mind was nationwide first couple months, right? We were just going to all of a sudden start this product that was nationwide. That didn't end up happening as fast as I had hoped.
Yeah, you beat Kind Bar in 6 months, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
So about 4 months in, we started production here locally, just to kind of get our name out there and start things up. And finally, this week, actually, I've gotten to the point where I'm about to go to Texas to run test batches with a manufacturer down there. So it feels like we're getting to the point where we're starting to expand nationally, but I mean, never too optimistic about those things.
Yeah, we had very similar beginnings of, we're going to make this system. It's going to be the best system, and we're going to get out there and we're going to hit the industry leaders. We're going to spread like wildfire and stuff. But when you get down to it, everything I found takes a lot longer than I always think it will. And no matter how much energy or, effort and time I put behind it, things just kind of have that natural flow. And of course, putting that in helps, but it's never as fast as I've thought it's going to move.
Totally. And I think that the having to wait this extra year in between has really opened my eyes a lot and made me realize that I probably wasn't ready to run a nationwide company in the beginning. So I definitely feel like I've developed the skills necessary in order to get there. And I mean, everything happens on its own timeline for a reason. And I think you'd probably feel the same way about that.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about your teams. Are you solo founders? Do you have co-founders?
I'm a solo founder. Kind of just came up with the idea myself, drew it up on Microsoft Paint, and went out and kind of built a team around my weaknesses. I don't have a computer science background. I don't know how to code, so I found people who could help with that. I know I'm not a marketer, so I went out and found a chief marketing officer who can handle that for me. IP and tech being the center of our company. We went out and found a very prominent patent attorney who could help us really lock down our IP. So, giving us more time in the market to spin up and generate some business.
That's amazing. I definitely can't say I'm a solo founder. I have 5 co-founders, and we all kind of came up with this idea together. I'm the one that's driving the business, but the other co-founders are mainly my mentors. So they really gave me the knowledge and helped me realize I can figure things out that I didn't necessarily know in the moment. So they're always there to kind of bounce ideas off of and strategize, and they keep me from making stupid decisions, which could have been done a lot, I'm sure.
How did you find your co-founders, Alexa?
Yeah, so they actually owned the cafe that I was managing. And then I kind of told them that I was going to quit and run full on with this idea, and they could be a part of it. And then they ended up actually selling that cafe to be a part of this rather than the cafe. So my job kind of all went at once, and I took I guess they were my bosses at the time, but I brought them on board with my idea.
Wow. So what do you think is, what has been your key takeaway from the last 3 months, and what do you hope to accomplish in the next 3? And I think, Alexa, you might have already hinted at that, but, I'm just kind of interested in, you guys are still early stage companies. What's kind of like your aha moment from the last immediate quarter, and what do you hope to accomplish in the next immediate quarter?
So for my side, the last 3 months, I got back from Syracuse and their entrepreneurship program for veterans, kind of accelerator over there. And what I found was I've been holding off and waiting too long. I keep thinking, I want to spread QuickCup. I want to get more data that my technology is working, more data on the impact I can have with it. And kind of the feedback I was getting from mentors and investors over there was, okay, well, how much is enough? I'm like, I don't really know. I want more. I want more, because then I can prove my technology, prove my valuations, and further on. And they're like, well, when's enough? And I didn't really have an answer for it. And they're kind of like, okay, well, is it just my hesitation that I feel like I'm not ready to go forward yet? And they kind of gave me that push of, we have proven what we set out to prove, and that we should kind of be looking out a little further and looking out at higher. And looking outside of Alaska a little more. We've kind of gone around the Alaska circuit and stuff, and they've introduced us to people down lower 48 that are interested. and the networking's been huge through them and going through different programs and finding the networking through there. So our next 3 months, we've kind of been looking outwards. And I just got back from Vegas about 10 days ago. I met with a franchise with 100 stores that, we kind of came to a verbal agreement that it sounded like we'd be able to provide what they were looking for the right price. And we're waiting on the dried ink contract to come back. But we're looking at those bigger horizons and moving forward and not being so hesitant to think that, we're a small Alaska company. Are we ready? Can we handle it? But actually going out there and being confident that we can.
I would kind of build off of that same point. Like, I think my biggest realization the past few months is that you never know what you're doing and you're never going to be completely prepared. Yes, I've developed skills that will help me once we do go big time, but it's like being an entrepreneur is all a matter of figuring it out. And there's always, once you start a business, there's so many different possibilities. So really, it's just been realizing that I'm never going to know and be completely prepared beforehand. But once I do take that big step, it's all going to fit into place and it's going to be challenging, but those challenges will help me learn.
That's for sure. Yeah. You never know, what it's going to take. And there's always going to be the unknown. And one of the things I liked with that, one of the mentors was telling me was don't say no for somebody else. Go in there and show them what you have and what you got. And don't just go in there and already have that no prepared, for them, or say, not take the meeting because, they're just going to say no, or that's not going to interest them. But go in there and find out what it does.
Right on. Well, listen, we are joined by Orion Matthews, who will tell us a little bit about his company and his background. Orion is a chap who is kind of Alaska plus. He's here, there, and everywhere. So, Alexa, Keith, you saw Orion at Pitchfest a little bit, but Orion, take it away and tell us what you're working on.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Joe. I'm working on thanks.org. It's a way for nonprofits to make more money by retaining their donors and hopefully extracting a longer term relationship out of them. So it's basically a way for them to show appreciation to those that have long-term relationships or short-term relationships, and they want to see them grow through a digital thank you card. And kind of talk a little bit about my background, Joe. So I was born in Alaska, grew up there, and also kind of spent a little bit of time out based in Washington, D.C., and currently I'm in Oregon. But I still maintain most of my business in Alaska. So run a consulting firm there called Querion. And then as part of our charter as a consulting firm, we do venture projects. And so thanks.org was a venture that we scoped out as something we wanted to do a little bit last year. And so we've been exploring the market for the product. It's been pretty exciting, actually. I've had talked to a lot of people, learned a lot of stuff, surprised at the size of the market. It seems that there's $400 billion in giving by individuals every year towards nonprofits, and those nonprofits spend $80 billion every year chasing that money. But the rate of first-time givers that atrophy out is 40%. So that means about every one donor that comes in the door, one leaves. And so we thought that's not a really great ratio, and maybe we can do something about it. So yeah, that's my story. And thank you for having me on. This is exciting to be part of this podcast.
This is the first time we've tried a remote multi-location podcast. I'm pretty excited. We did a live one once, and that was a really good experiment. So I hope we can keep doing stuff like this. Orion, talk a little bit about what it's like to bridge thanks.org and Querion. So Keith and Alexa are both full-time on their projects. It's not safe to say projects, it's businesses, right? But yeah. You're split in half. Talk about what that's like and how you cope.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I was actually watching other presentations by startup people. It's kind of a common configuration for a lot of bootstrapped startups. Sometimes people go all in and have the option to work full time on a gig. And sometimes people have other things going on. They have to balance the two until the time's right to shift focus 100% onto a given activity. And so for me, having a business already in place and operating, I was able to leverage that to provide funding essentially in the early stages for this idea. And that comes with a big drawback too, where focus is kind of one of your most valuable assets too. So it's a balancing act. So there's benefits because you have cash flow and capital, and then and you're bootstrappable. And in some respects, you have clients. Given that we chose something that was in the space that our clients know, or that our clients are also operating in. But then the downside is you have less focus. You have other things drawing attention to you. I don't know which one is best. I think there's pros and cons to doing it both ways.
All right. So talk about how you guys organize your time, right? Because currency comes in two flavors. You can spend time and you can spend money. So how's this going? Keith, Alexa, and feel free to build on each other's comments. Keith, Alexa, do you guys have an abundance of time? Do you feel like every hour is taken? Do you feel like you have enough time to ideate and chase down things that will improve your business? Talk about how you're managing that.
For me, I don't have any time. My time is completely eaten up. We just closed on a house. I'm in my new house right now. I'm sitting out in the living room because I don't even have my office unpacked yet. So that's been eating up a lot of my time lately. But the travel, going around meeting with people I really value face to face, and being in Alaska. I was just up in Fairbanks a few days ago, Vegas last week. So always traveling, always going somewhere. Really working on balancing the work life. I have 2 young kids, the wife. I've downscaled some of my other commitments just to kind of try and bring it back in and really spend more time with the family, trying to turn my phone off for at least an hour or so a day, really connect with the family like I haven't been for the last year or so. It's been so fast paced, always going somewhere, always doing something. Even trying to jam fun in has been stressful because I try and block out, okay, Friday night, we're leaving. We're going to go on a fishing trip. We're going to get out, but then trying to get up and get ready and get packed. And I'm still trying to finish up this email or finish up this conference. And that's been stressful. So I'm really trying I'm still working on the balance and get enough time with the family and still keeping momentum behind the business. So not something I've figured out.
So I'm in a completely different situation. I've actually thought a lot recently about if I had kids or any other responsibilities at this time, I don't know how I would be able to manage it. So anybody who runs a business with children and families, I'm mind blown how they're able to do all that. But even in the beginning of starting my business, like I said, I dropped everything I had. I have no other responsibilities really other than this business. And even in the beginning, I was like, holy cow, I am so busy. My nose is constantly down and I'm just grinding away. And moving forward, I think I've learned that being busy is more so a concept of not necessarily prioritizing correctly. So now I'm able to kind of get my priorities in line. And I actually feel, although I'm doing a lot more, I feel like I have a lot more time available for myself because I made sure to prioritize taking care of myself and then the top 3 things that I need to focus on during the day. And there's never necessarily enough time to get everything done. But if I get the important things done throughout the day, then I end the day feeling accomplished. And I think that's the number one goal I aim for, is to make sure I work on my priorities throughout the day.
I would second that. Another thing that I think that has worked for us is to bring other people to bear on problems that take a lot of time. So I'm fortunate enough that I have a co-founder, Galen Mitterman, who is full-time on the project and is taking on he's an MBA with product expertise. So he's doing a lot of product market fit. And then we did a lot of outsourcing to try and push, our accounting and things on other things that were going to suck up a lot of time onto services that we could basically kind of set and forget, more or less. So that's been kind of our strategy, is been to kind of really try and whittle out the pieces where I'm not adding as much value, so that I could focus on the pieces where I would add value. And even then, it's a juggle, right? So try not to get too stressed out, and essentially try and just keep focused on the things that matter. And probably the last thing is to say no to the things that don't. So going to things like this podcast is super important. Because it builds a community. But there might be other.
I'm lucky. I feel like I dodged a bullet on that one. Oh man!
I wanted to throw out how important this was. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, and I think that's interesting. Like Keith, Alexa, do you guys find yourself saying no to things?
I think I definitely need to get better at that. I'm definitely like a yes kind of a person, and that's my immediate response to anything. Recently, I've been really trying to stop and not say yes before I really think about what I'm getting myself into, because once I do say yes, I have to hold myself to that commitment no matter what it is. So yeah, definitely something I'm trying to work on.
Yeah, just like Alexa, I'm a yes person. So when somebody asks for help or like, hey, can you do this or that? It's always yeah, no problem. And then I always try and be a person of my word. So then it's I always follow through on it. But I just recently kind of had to say a big no and really take a big step back in an area that I'd been helping someone for a long time. But I was like, I just really don't, as much as I'd love to continue helping, I just don't have the time anymore to do that. So yeah, I've been trying to downgrade some of my outside commitments.
Hey, can you share that story in a general way? Of course, I wouldn't want any specifics, but what's an example of what you need to turn off or say no to, and then we'll ask Orion for an example.
For me, so I'm an EMT, kind of had the combat medic background, and I was going out to Whittier, helping them and being their medic full time. And it started off as, I'd love to help you guys. They'd lost their full-time position person. They went a couple months without any medic in town. And I was like, I'd love to come help you guys and be there, because I love the community. I love the people. The job was fun, and it allowed, I was able to kind of work on my stuff while I was out there, because I would sleep out there as well. And, it was a great camping experience, pulled my trailer out there. My family would stay with me. So a little bit of bonding time is there as well. But then it just started growing. The responsibilities started growing. And I told them up front, I can't be your full-time permanent position for the next couple of years. I can fill the void here a little bit, and I'd love to help. And then it kept growing and rolling into a bigger and bigger thing. And it's finally, as much as I'd love to help and stay, it's like, okay, I can't take this on anymore. You need to find your next full-time permanent who's going to come here and take this job over.
Orion?
So, things like that, I think, are just like Keith mentioned, personal commitments or other work commitments that you just don't have time for, trying to get ahead of those. And then also sometimes partnerships that aren't going to probably pan out, that you kind of know with a gut feel that they're not going to, but you would do them anyway to be polite. Some of those, which is nice. If you say no to those, you're also saving other people time too. So it's really trying to kind of balance that gut feel of what's going to work out and what's not, and choosing the road that you think is going to work out. Exploring the unknown takes a yes, and startup people are explorers. And so it's hard to turn that off. And I think you don't want to turn it off all the time. It's just gets a little more modulated as you start to focus in on your path. You have to ignore the unknown a little bit more than you're used to, maybe.
And I think once you kind of get into that and figure out really the direction you're going, you can kind of visualize where you want to be in the next few years, and anything that's not going to help you get there, you can say no to. Those are, because like I said earlier, there's endless opportunities. And if you start saying yes to everything, then you're just scattered and you're not necessarily working towards your all-time end-all goal.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about doing this all from Alaska, and we'll start with Keith, go to Alexa, and then go to Orion, because Orion has an experience that bridges multiple geographies. So my general question is, like, I mean, for the last 6 years, I've been very participative in watching Alaska's entrepreneurial ecosystem grow and watching startups grow in the state. So I'm interested, from your perspective as 3 startups, what are the pros you've found in being an Alaska entrepreneur, and what are the cons? Right? What's a rose? What's a thorn, Keith?
Well, for my business, it worked out well for me because doing the coffee hut culture, and we kind of chose coffee carts, for the order ahead system because they're so prevalent up here. And I know owners. I can go into the coffee shops myself and talk to the owners or managers versus, lower 48, besides Seattle, Pacific Northwest. Outside of there, the coffee hut culture isn't as big. And when you're talking about quick service restaurants, drive-through restaurants or coffee places, they're more franchised. So being up here is great for me. I got to go in and talk to all the owners and see how we can improve our system. So it was a great pro for me being up here and growing up watching the coffee hut culture is kind of what gave me the idea in the first place. Some of the cons, the travel. I mean, it's 3.5 hours to Seattle, and then I can hub out and get to anywhere else. It's not horrible. I'd never traded.
For me, I would say the pro about being in Alaska is definitely the community here. I think it's so easy to really get support from the entire community and get your name out here. Like, Anchorage isn't that small of a town, but everybody is so connected. And once somebody tries to go big and do something along the lines of following their dreams, everybody just wants to see that success. So that's been I realized Anchorage was the perfect place to have started my business. But along those lines, with a business like mine, we import ingredients from the lower 48 because they're not necessarily available up here, especially in bulk quantities. So we import ingredients up here, and originally all these companies were shipping the ingredients up here for free. And so I had kind of aligned cost of goods sold having to do with that. And throughout the months of actually ordering from these companies, they've started adding on shipping costs, which has literally doubled our cost of goods sold from the beginning to now. So that's a huge problem we've encountered right now. And there doesn't necessarily seem to be a solution to that, since shipping, importing or exporting from Alaska is just so expensive.
So Orion, you've got the external and the internal perspective.
Yeah. So, I'll share a brief story that I had. So I ran a company that was Alaska, DC, and New York for a while. And we had, technical teams on the ground in all those places. And I remember being in New York City, and I was talking with this client, this huge homeless shelter, ran all these medical centers. And anyway, they were solving problems that had been solved in Alaska years ago. And I was like, how is this possible? I'm in New York City. Like, this should be done. And what I started to realize is I was sort of kicking over all of these sort of technical problems in various different businesses, is that Alaska was actually ahead in many respects. And so I found that even if you go to like the creme de la creme, big cities, and you really start peeling it back, the innovation in those areas isn't necessarily as ahead as you would think being an Alaskan. I think Alaskans oftentimes feel that they're behind the curve, but I actually think it's the opposite. I think because Alaska is so far away, they're forced to innovate in ways that other places just don't. And so you see really interesting innovations coming out of Alaska as a result of its sort of geographic isolation. So I think it's a weakness being far away, but it's also a strength. And I think that Alaska actually has a really interesting frontiersman sort of innovative spirit and willingness to do things that aren't culturally contextual in other regions. So I think Alaska is a great place to be a startup. And and that the location has disadvantages, but also can create really cool advantages in terms of mindset.
And I really like what Alexis said about the community. 9 times out of 10, nobody's perfect, but 90+% of the time, like the whole community supports you when you decide to chase them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, Orion, you were saying?
No, I was just going to add more examples.
Good.
Aviation manual, a third of it is written from Alaskan experiences. The pilots all over the world use. I mean, there's just a lot. There's a lot of examples of that where Alaska's leading in the space.
Right on. All right, wise words from our Pitchfest winners. Thanks for listening to them. We'll be back in just a couple weeks with the second part of this series, where we're actually, yes, going to talk about pitching. And we're going to talk about why it's important for an early stage startup to do that. And a hint, not everybody's good at pitching, but when you're starting a company, you really need to get there. It's important, it's vital, it's critical, and you'll hear their thoughts on the matter when we're back in the next few weeks. In the meantime, my final plug, you guys, you've got to go check out alaska.startupweek.co. There's free events happening statewide about entrepreneurship. And as the Pitchfest winner said, Alaskans are yes people. You're a yes person too. These free events are designed for you to give you skills and to help bring you into the Alaska entrepreneurial ecosystem because we want to support you. Final thoughts. What's 49SAF going to do for Alaska Startup Week? Well, on Tuesday, we're going to be hosting a brown bag lunch at City Hall, Suite 700, and it's the classic content of how to pitch. Guilty as charged, guys. We're going to do it one more time. And then on Thursday morning in the mayor's conference room at 9 a.m., we're going to host a session on cofounders, best practices and awkward conversations. Look, whether you think you need a co-founder, whether you think you don't, a lot of people prefer and need someone to take the journey with them to build value. But that's challenging. People have different ideas, and it's important to discuss these things and to make co-founding a process. And that's what myself and Rachel Miller of Alaska Pacific University are going to talk about. Who's CEO? How does an equity split work? What's the start of the co-founder process? What's the end of it? What's the end goal of the company? How do you integrate all that? We're going to cover it. And finally, Friday night, 40 seats only, Startup Poker 2.0. You've got to check it out. We're bringing up Bob Crimmins from Startup Haven. He's the founder of Startup Poker 2.0. There's only 40 seats. It's totally free to play, but you've got to register. And it's an amazing opportunity to sit down and connect with other startup CEOs, other investors, and people in the Alaska entrepreneurship community. So please come out in Anchorage on Friday night, the 16th. All right, that's it. We will talk to you soon. Thank you, Anchorage, and I'm going to go listen to way too much New Wave 80s. Bye-bye.